Hello, I'm Vermont Secretary of State Sarah Copeland-Hansis. Our office puts a great deal of work into ensuring that our local, state, and federal elections in Vermont are secure. I'm here with some of Vermont's city and town clerks to explain what that work entails. How do we know that elections in Vermont are secure?
First, we make sure our voter registration rolls are up to date with accurate information
for each of Vermont's 497,520 registered voters.
Every day some voters move, others die,
and it's crucial that we can make sure our voter records reflect who is eligible to vote and where they're voting.
Vermont is part of the Electronic Registration Information Center, or ERIC, which uses encrypted public records data to let our office know if a Vermont voter has moved to a different part of the state or out of state. We're also able to get notified of duplicate registrations and voters who've died, so we can clear up our records.
While they do that at the state level, we clerks work with elected members of the Board of Civil Authority to go through our rolls with a fine-toothed comb.
The board is typically made up of members from multiple political parties. We use the Vermont Election Management System to make sure we have accurate information for all active voters in our jurisdiction. We can see if anyone registering in our town is already registered somewhere else in Vermont, and our election management system automatically picks out any duplicate records, which ensures that there is only one registration record per voter.
This all boils down to making sure that every eligible voter in Vermont is able to cast their vote on Election Day. For every vote cast in a statewide election in Vermont, we have a paper ballot, and we are able to keep meticulous track of who voted, when, where, and how. More on that in a minute.
This means that, for example, if somebody voted by mail and then they tried to vote a second time in person, they wouldn't be able to. One person, one vote.
Speaking of voting by mail, how do we know mail-in ballots are secure? This is why we put so much effort into our voter rolls. To vote by mail, you must be registered and verified with the state. One person, one vote. Every absentee ballot is tracked. If someone wanted to use another person's ballot to vote by mail, they would have to find someone who's registered to vote, voter impersonation, which is a 1 year in prison or up to $200 fine, and steal their ballot, mail fraud and mail theft, 5 years in prison, and then they would have to forge a signature on the ballot envelope. Perjury, up to 15 years in prison and up to a $10,000 fine.
If someone tried that, they would then have to just hope that the person whose ballot they stole doesn't ask us about their missing ballot or show up to vote on Election Day, which would trigger an investigation.
Or that my election workers or I don't get suspicious, which would also trigger an investigation.
That this action can't be traced back to them. It can.
If they somehow got through all of that, they would have affected a single vote. It's worth mentioning that whenever absentee or early ballots are being handled, 2 election officials are required to be present. This is a highly scrutinized process by design. To mess with mail-in ballots on a mass scale would be virtually impossible, and the penalty for the crime would be significant. So what if instead of altering ballots themselves, someone wanted to affect the counting of votes in Vermont?
Vermont is a decentralized voting state. The infrastructure for vote counting is managed at the local level. Anytime votes are being counted, it's performed by pairs of sworn election officials from different political parties who must work together and agree on their count.
Results are then reported up to the state level through the secure election management system and made available to the public online in real time through our election night reporting site.
This means there's no one place of origin where someone could illegally impact the vote counts, and the tallying process is both closely and publicly watched.
Vermont law mandates that any town with 1,000 or more registered voters must use vote counting machines, since they're not only more efficient, but crucially, consistently more accurate than hand counting.
Today, 54% of Vermont's towns and 80% of our voters have their votes tallied in vote counting machines known as tabulators. Tabulators use optical scanners to count voter-marked paper ballots.
Each machine is air-gapped, meaning it has no connection, physical or wireless, to any other system or networks. No internet, nothing. They're sealed into themselves. Lonely for them, I guess, but good for our election security.
We don't wait until the day of for something to go wrong. 10 days before an election, we test the machines to make sure they're reading ballots correctly.
Before, during, and after an election, each machine's memory card is controlled through a strict chain of custody from the clerk's office to our office. If someone wanted to mess with a vote counting machine's results, they would have to physically tamper with each individual machine. In that event, they would still have only affected one town or one voting ward. So the idea that someone would or could Mission Impossible their way through this many Vermont towns is highly unlikely. It would take the entire Ocean's 11 crew riding in Santa's sleigh to pull off that level of a heist in one night.
So Election Day has come and gone. Do we just kick back and relax? No. Following Election Day, we have 48 hours to get our official results to the Secretary of State's office.
This is a chance for us to confirm, double-check, review write-ins, and make sure no mistakes were made during the late night hours on election night.
A lot of focus and energy goes into making sure everything runs smoothly at the polling place, so this is a chance to really concentrate on the data itself.
A good night's sleep, a coffee, and a fresh set of eyes goes a long way towards making sure everything is completely accurate when it's sent out.
Then, 30 days after every general election, my office conducts a post-election audit. We gather in December in a public live-streamed event where we select a random group of cities and towns, some of which are hand count towns, to confirm the results reported match the ballots. The results reported by the clerk are matched to the ballots themselves to make sure there are no discrepancies.
Even after that, Vermont law requires that ballots be kept for 22 months after statewide elections. That way, if there are concerns about the results that have been generated from the polling place, the Secretary of State's office can get back and check the ballots themselves.
We retain a copy of each ballot cast so that we can make sure the ballots themselves always match the reported results.
I hope this video helps to explain the many ways in which we ensure that Vermont's elections are secure. Secure elections are a critical part of the foundation for a healthy democracy. The other major part of that foundation is voter enfranchisement and participation. I strongly encourage all Vermonters to make sure their voice is heard on Election Day.
If you ever have questions about how to vote,
Or where to vote,
Or when to vote.
you can contact one of us, your Vermont town and city clerks.